So I'm going to show you a little tip here. If you have an early NC transmission, and the first symptom is that it's stuck in gear. So it's stuck in one gear, you can't get it out, and you think, oh, the transmission is junk. So there's these little plastic bushings in the transmission that crack and fall apart and fail. And you can get into the transmission, clean that stuff out, and replace those bushings with some aluminum bushings and actually get back with pretty cheap. So what you want to access here is top cover. So I've removed all the bolts here, just a 12 millimeter socket, removed all the bolts from the top cover. It is sealed with silicone, and that's it. That's the only gasket. And so you can pry a little bit under here, under here, under here, and over here, and this cover then will pop off. I've already popped it off here. So we're going to lift this out. Here's what we see underneath. The first spot that we're looking at is the shift selector, which is this little arm right here, has two plastic bushings, and I'll show you some closer up shots of this here. Two plastic bushings, one here, one here. The other spot that we're looking at is at the bottom of this arm right here. This little arm here, you can see how this has got some play in it. Okay. That's because the bushing that is down in there, it's the same little square plastic bushing. And the other end of that is probably getting ready to fall apart or has fallen apart already. So what I'm going to do, this is preemptive. This was removed from a working transmission. So we're going to go ahead and replace those three bushings before they fail, because this car is 2006. It's got 170,000 miles on it, and I don't want to wait for those to break. They fall down, they get stuck in the synchros, and your transmission gets stuck in gear. We had this happen to a previous 2006 in a track car, and we're going to start abusing this car pretty hard. The cool thing is, if we look at this transmission, so this thing, 172,000 miles, 2006. Look at how clean this thing is. This thing was obviously well cared for, which has me feeling good that just replacing these, we'll be able to run this thing for some time before we inevitably blow it up. So I've taken off the 10 millimeter bolts that hold the selector cage on here. Okay, and we're going to pull these bolts out. And then this whole selector cage will come out and lift it out. And now this gives us kind of access to where these bushings are. And we are going to have to drive out a couple pins to get to those. But right there's the bushing that we're looking at. Right there and right there. Those we are going to replace. So in order to access these bushings, we're going to need to get to two roll pins that we're going to have to remove. We're going to have to punch out this roll pin here and this roll pin right there. Right there. So you'll need a punch those two roll pins out and allow this one to slide out and this to slide, and then this piece here will come out and we can access and replace those two bushings. So punch that roll pin and that roll pin. So yes, you will need to invest in some decent punches to get these roll pins out of the right size. So I'm going to start with this guy here. And she's out. which then allows me to kind of pull this whole shaft out. Seriously, it allows me to move the whole shaft out. Come on out. Come on. There we go. And then we can get to that little bushing there. See? Comes out. There's that little bugger right there. That's the thing that's hardened and will break, fall apart, and screw up your track day. So we'll also need to get this one out here as well, and then we can get to that bushing. And there's our second one. So I happen to have a little plastic bag full of these. Some of them I got from Walter. Some of them I got from a friend of mine who had them made up. I'm not sure which or which, but the ones we had made up, you kind of have to sand them down just a little bit to get them to fit. So they're made slightly oversized so that you can sand them down and then they'll fit in there tight, and then they fit on here well. So I'm going to go ahead and get a couple of those ready to go in and then reassemble. Okay, so we've kind of sanded these down a little bit so they fit right in there nice and easily. Fit in here nice and easily. And then that'll allow us to reassemble this. And we'll line that up and drive in a new roll pin there, and do the same with the other piece. And the next bushing that we've got is in the selector that's actually in the transmission case. Consulted the service manual, and these bolts here, you're going to want to tighten those to 70 to 97 inch-pounds. 70 to 97, which means 97, right? I don't know why they give you such a big range, but 97 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds for these bolts. So the next bushing that we want to replace is on the other end of this shift lever here. It's difficult to see down in there. So what we need to do is we're going to pull off that snap ring. It's right there. Pop that snap ring off. I'm going to come over here. We're going to take this bolt out, and then this will slide out, pull the shaft off, and then we can take this piece out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this little bushing, get it out of the way, and then I'll reach in there with some snap ring pliers and pop that off. And the main goal, not to drop it down inside the transmission. So here's the arm that we took out. Basically This piece was inside the trans. This is the shaft that went through and the bushing bearing that's on it that holds it. And so when we slid it off, underneath this clip that was on here was also this washer. So good to use a little magnet to pull that off. So our next step is to pop this E-clip off, okay? And then we're going to put the aluminum bushing back on, pop the E-clip back on. There we go. Now we're ready for reassembly. There is an O-ring that goes on this shaft here. And if you can, you might as well replace this O-ring before you reassemble it. I've got a trans on one of our cars that I think when it was disassembled by somebody, not me, they left this O-ring out, and that transmission has since leaked from that opening forever. So new O-ring, highly recommended. Okay, so we've reinstalled the bin, reinstalled the shaft. Now all we've got to do next is to first put the washer on there, and then we're going to put that snap ring back on there, and then the bushing here. And with that, we'll be able to reassemble this transmission. So I've got it back in there together. It was actually easier putting the snap ring back on than taking it off. So we can go ahead and put the cover on and seal this up. And what we do is put just a thin bead of silicone around the inside of the screw holes. Screw holes aren't open to oil. So it's a thin bead around the inside of the screw holes. And you're gonna tighten those up to 16.5 foot-pounds here for this top cover. Now, if you went in here and any of these bushings were gone, they were missing, they were completely destroyed and ate up, your transmission was maybe stuck in gear, you may want to go ahead and pull this tail shaft off, because all the oil and stuff winds up collecting way down here at the very end, and that's where all the gunk and snot is, and the broken bits of bushing would be down in there, which you kind of want to get out. So in order to do that, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to either remove the roll pin from this piece, or you can take this off and remove the roll pin from the piece inside there. This one may be the easier one. You can pull it back to here, pop that roll pin out. This piece can then come out. And then when you take this tail shaft off, okay, that shaft will just stay with it. Pull it out, and then you can get in there and clean everything out from that side. So that is worthwhile to do if your bushing is already broken. So, and that's it. We're done.